So let's just go back. Yes, and that's the 2-second yes. How will Christmas dinner be different after Brexit? No Brussels, sadly.
I spent over 14 hours looking for the simplest way to add an async Python serverless function to act as a background worker for my product Photon Designer. So here's the wrapper that we're going to call, and you can see it's async, so it immediately returns an activation ID, and then it runs in the background. It gives the same activation ID there on the cloud, and then it calls a joke API, who is Santa's favorite singer, Elvis Presley. And then we're also going to set up GitHub Actions so that we can deploy automatically with CI to production as soon as you push to your branch.
So here's the written guide that we'll be following along. This is the guide that I was missing for those 14 hours. And 3 things we're going to do here. We're going to, number 1, develop serverless functions locally, including Python packages without Lambda layers and no Docker. 2, we're going to call the serverless function asynchronously, like you would if you're using it as a background function for your web app with Django. And 3, we're going to deploy the serverless function automatically using GitHub Actions to production. Yeah, let's get into it. So this is the final product, which I've shown already. Okay, so create DigitalOcean account, and then you install the command line tool. So I've run this, and I've got my API token, and then we want to run docs-tool auth init context name, and init, and then context name, I'm going to call it local, let's say. And now here you're going to enter your access token. And so to get your API token, you can go here and then go to applications, API, then generate new token, and then enter in a name. Let's call it local access and generate token. And then this is a secret for you, so be careful with this. This is a password. And then enter the access token in there. Validating token, great. And now we've done that, you can go docs-tool auth list, and that's good. Test that it works. Step 4, you can also run that, but then also scroll down and install the serverless parts here, which I have already done. Yeah, great. Okay, now we're going to start developing our serverless function. So firstly, the way that works is you create namespaces, which are sort of separated containers or boxes and we're going to create one for development, and then we're going to create one for production. And then we will push the function to development. And then when later on in this, then when we push our branch to our code to production in our GitHub repo, it will then automatically connect to that production namespace and push our production serverless function to production. Quite simple. Okay, and so let's create your development. It's called development. That's the label for our namespace. And I'm going to do it in Frankfurt because that's local to me. Change it to your local region if you'd like. Great. And so we've connected to our development namespace. And then we're going to create our function locally. So copy that. And in the top level, paste it in. And as you can see, simple function project will pop up here. There it goes. And inside, go into it, you can see this is our serverless function with sample in. So now that we've just created our function and folder, now we're going to deploy it. Wait a second for that. So just go to deploy, and there you go. And it's deployed now. And if we can run this as well and then the function name is sample hello and URL. And that is the URL that our deployed development function is running on. It's all public. And there it is, hello stranger. Great. Now, and we can also run that function locally by pasting this in. And there you go, we get hello Keith because we pass Keith as an argument there, and that is picked up there. Great. Now we want to automatically deploy the function on save. So whenever we run the function, whenever we change something, we want to redeploy. And so copy that and then paste it into your terminal. And you can see it's now watching. So if we change this to yo, this has now changed. It's now deploying. And if we go back to the project on this, back to the serverless function on that, yo stranger. Great. Now let's test that. Let's by pasting this in instead. And you'll see the watch will deploy again. Resuming watch, go back to the URL, and it's updated. Ice is less dense than water, which is actually very cool. Moving on from that. Now we want to get the URL. I've already explained that, but we can do that again at any point but leave this running in a different terminal. So if you want to get that, then sample URL, and that's the URL. Okay, so moving on to section 2, we want to update the function to simulate a long-running task that our web app, our Django web app, would then offload, and our serverless function would run it in the background as a background worker. So we will we need to rename the file because we also want to install packages, Python packages. We need to rename this to main __ main dot __ dot py. That's just the name that DigitalOcean requires. And then we want to copy this and paste it in. And you can see we're going to import requests here and then simulate the long running function there for multiple seconds. And then we want to add a requirements file in the project there. So requirements.txt. And then just add in requests because we're using requests there and it's an external package. Then we need to add a build script here. That will then build the package and paste that in. It just installs into a virtual environment and activates it and then installs the requirements in from here. Cool. And then we also need to make the build file executable so that it will run. This is a bit of a gotcha, so make sure you do that. And we're here, cd into, make sure you're inside and then run build. There you go, done. And now let's deploy. Or it should actually maybe have done that automatically. Let's see if that's, yeah. So let's just go back. Yes, and that's the 2 second. Yes. How will Christmas dinner be different after Brexit? No Brussels, sadly. And so you can see that had the 2 second delay, and you wouldn't want that in any long running function in your web app. You would definitely want to offload that to a background worker, which we're using the serverless function for, so that block the server for the user. Okay, let's move on. So great. And now we want to add a kind of imaginary step to illustrate how you might use it with Django. So we're going to call it asynchronously with Python, because at the moment you can see it's still waiting because it's not asynchronous, it's synchronous. So here's what we do. We have to go and call the REST API for DigitalOcean. So we want to go to our cloud functions, go to the UI in DigitalOcean and go to development. That's our namespace that we've created. And then that's our function that we were running. And there's some nice logs here. So we want to click on the function and go to settings and then go down here to get to this REST APIs. And we're going to then call this with our Python function in just a moment. You need to click here and that will insert our token. Be careful with that because that's private. So now let's create a services.py file to call the serverless function asynchronously. And this is our imaginary web app. We could then import this into Django and have our Django view call this to run the long running function. Okay, so pip install requests into our installed. Actually, yeah, it's just already installed into our environment because we're going to use that. And then we're going to create a services.py file. Okay, so then we're going to create a services.py file here, which we would then, like I said, call with Django and paste that in. And then we want to fill that out with our URL. You could just get this from the CLI, like I said. Add that in there, add that in here. And then add your secret API key in there, which you'll need to get after basic there to there. And paste that in there. Crucially, you can see we didn't include the blocking equals true and those query parameters, but I am including that here because we want to make it asynchronous, like I said. So this will call our function at this asynchronously and then return a activation ID. So let's run that. Perfect. As you can see, rather than waiting those 2 seconds, it hit immediately. So yeah, you just run and we've got that activation ID. If this was much longer, let's say we set this to 10 seconds, you need to actually just change a setting in DigitalOcean to do that, but you can run up to 15 minutes. Then this would be running in the background and not interrupt your app at all. You might also be wondering, okay, how would I then communicate that to Django? What you would do is then have a request here that you would send to your Django API endpoint after you've done the work and completed this long-running function to say the task is complete or whatever the status of the task. So that's how to connect it. Okay, great. So now section 3, we're going to look at how to deploy the serverless function to production using GitHub Actions, which is a really easy and great CI runner. Okay, so as we've done, we've developed the function locally and having updated with the development namespace. Now we want to deploy to production. So we're going to merge our development code. And then when it's merged to our master branch, it then connects to our production namespace and deploys the function to the production namespace. So here's what we need to do. So we need to create a namespace called production, which we can do just like before. There you go, it's created. Make sure you connect back to development, otherwise it will build on development. Okay, cool. And now we're going to set up the GitHub action. So this is really easy to do. We'll need a DigitalOcean API token, yet another one, but just click on that and then go through on how to create it. It's really clear. And then you want to add that as a secret to your GitHub repo. Again, really easy to do. There's the description here is really, really clear. Go and do that. And then after that, you're going to copy this. Let's just use that. And then create the GitHub action locally. So the way you do that is by creating a series of folders. So you call it GitHub, and then a folder in that called workflows, and then a file in here, we can call it deploy.yaml, and then you paste in what I've just copied here. And this might seem a bit like magic, but it's really simple when you get used to it. I mean, on this is the name, and then whenever you push to your main branch, it will then use these series of actions here to set up Python, install, and you'll see actually the similar commands here that we entered manually to install the DigitalOcean command line tool using the access token that you added to your GitHub repo, and then add the serverless support, and then connect to the production namespace, and then deploy the function to the production namespace, deploy our function, and then print the sample URL. And after you're done with that, it should look, I've done that already. And so you can see this is what we deployed earlier. And then that is the function URL. Cool. Hope that's really useful. And one other thing to mention is that you'd want to have have a little bit of logic in your Django app or whatever app you're using, so that change the URL that you're sending your request to the serverless function based on whether it's in production or development. But that should be very simple to do. And let me know if you want any more. Comment below if you want me to answer that in any more detail.
Congrats, you've done it. If you're interested in getting more free content from me, then there's a link in the description below to my mailing list for everything that I make and product updates, my product Photon Designer. Besides that, I'm producing more Django content weekly, and here are some more videos. All the best to you.